Because of various issues pertaining to what is and isn't announced as being proper, I have chosen to document this particular sequence in this manner.
The majestic mesas and rugged mountains of the American Southwest are home to many native peoples, including the Navajo, Zuni, Pueblo, Hopi, and Apache. These tribes have many different beliefs, but their creation myths all share something quite remarkable.
We were talking about our origin, and you hear the stories about us coming down from Alaska through the Bering Strait, but what we believe is we came out from the ground.
The Apaches and other Pueblo Indians, such as the Zunis and the Hopi Indians, all have this legend that they emerged from some underground world into today's world.
In some legends, the southwestern peoples went back underground for safety. The Hopi of Arizona say their ancestors escaped a deadly storm of falling stars with the help of the Snake people, who took them to shelters deep in the earth.
And to my viewers, those that listen to this, there are all kinds of signs, of facts, of earth-dwelling people out in New Mexico where people literally lived in caves, in addition to other cultures here in America pertaining to the Native American culture in other parts of this great nation who've done the exact same thing. I don't necessarily go along with their ideology towards them coming from the ground and their original descent, but I do still favor towards the fact that whenever they come to America, they first left the southern Mexico, South America region and merged up through Alaska, and then eventually come down through Canada and come to this great nation called the Americans.
Hopi legend speaks of the Ant people, who protected them from storms of fire and ice.
The Hopi Indians survived cataclysms by living in this underground world with the Ant people for a certain period of time, and then eventually they emerged from the underground world back into the surface world.
Ant people. Snake people. Could these stories be based on ancestral tales of people actually living underground? Possibly during the last ice age. Or could the ancestors of today's southwestern tribes have taken refuge in subsurface dwellings similar to the underground city of Derinkuyu in Turkey? If so, over the centuries, might they have developed physical traits like large eyes and fingers that made them more closely resemble actual earth-dwelling creatures?
The shamans and the elders of Native Americans, they will tell you that before these people were able to emerge out of planet Earth, they were brought here by the star people, the star gods, which arrived from outer space.
I have stood in front of what are called the ant people and some of the very strange, large-eyed drawings on the rocks and wondered, am I looking at Native American interpretation of what today is called the extraterrestrial biological entity?
Is it possible that these underground creatures of Native American legend were actually alien visitors? If so, could some of them still be living beneath the surface of the southwestern desert? For decades, stories of encounters with UFOs and alien beings have been told among the people of New Mexico's Jicarilla Apache Reservation. Some of the aliens in these stories bear a strange resemblance to the ancient tales of the ant-like and snake-like beings from the Hopi legends.
There is things up here that no one can explain.
The Jicarilla Apache Reservation is located next to the small town of Dulce, nestled in the shadow of the over 9,000-foot high Archuleta Mesa.
It is from this mesa and mountain that people claim they have seen UFOs flying out of the mountain.
Could the native tales of spaceships and strange creatures be true? Some UFO researchers and conspiracy theorists believe that these eyewitness accounts are not only true, but are evidence of a secret collaboration between underground aliens and the U.S. military.
The amount of military traffic over Dulce, the unmarked helicopters, the black helicopters, the heavy-duty Chinooks, all these helicopters spend a lot more time in Dulce than they should if nothing were going on here. Among the stories that we've heard from the Jicarilla Apache is that they discovered vents actually right here on the mesa.
A while back, when my brother was still alive, we used to come up here in the back, and he showed us the shaft, and that thing was bigger than me. But we walked in, and I didn't want to go any further.
The vents were here maybe 25 years ago. You'd hear strange noises, groans, sighs, human groans. And this led a lot of credence to stories that human beings were being vivisected, experimented on. And thus the legend of strange creatures and strange noises coming out of this mesa grew and expanded.
Aliens living underground. Strange, secret government cover-ups. Could Native American legends of underground beings help unearth the truth behind these incredible stories? Some think the answer might be found deep beneath the surface of North America. But others believe the truth lies hidden in a mysterious cave, thousands of miles to the south. A cave that hides proof of alien visitors who journeyed beyond the stars.
Now, is that what I personally believe as far as aliens? I believe that in God and through God and because of God, God can conform and reconform himself in any manner that he wants to do so in. Regardless whether it's in the form of a supernatural being, or the form of a green alien, or the form of the Loch Ness Monster, I believe that there's no limitations to what God, the creator of this universe, can do. Okay? Also, I believe that the evangelical beings who has fallen from heaven has those same powers, but are limited in exactly how far that they can go with their ingenuity skills. They can steal. And the Bible clearly states that they can transfigurate themselves as angels of light, but in reality are nothing more than fallen demonic spirits and angelical beings. And for people not to be able to accept this, though the Bible clearly speaks about these type of entities that are among us, is really naive and foolish to the Homo sapiens, because the Bible clearly states that the creator of this universe created all things. And God is not the one that is limited towards what he either can do or cannot do, but it's man. It's us. It's our minds. It's our faith. It's our ability to believe. We are the ones that limit the evangelical beings, regardless whether they be the evangelical beings on the good side or the evangelical beings on the bad side. We are the ones that limit these abilities that these evangelical beings have. So, to answer the question, was there aliens back years ago? In their eyes, they may have thought that they was aliens. Just like in our eyes, we may think that the Loch Ness Monster is something that actually crawls out of the sea as far as being a monster, but in reality, who's to say that the Loch Ness Monster doesn't exist in some people's minds, because they've actually seen it. They've actually experienced it. Kind of like Sasquatch, Bigfoot. You got people out there in the world today, here in the Western world, that truly believe that they have seen some sort of object that looks furry, that stands about 8 foot tall, that can literally run like no other beast or animal. I mean, whenever I was in, I'm going to use this for a quick illustration. Whenever I was in Florida, in Casadata, where there is known supernatural forces at work pertaining to a college, a university, or I think it's a college, it may be a university, there that teaches people how to become witches and warlocks, soothsayers, fortune tellers. You can go to 10 out of 10 homes, knock on people's doors that don't have nothing to do with the college and don't have nothing to do with those type of activities pertaining to fortune tellers, in a 10-mile radius. Knock on their doors and ask them if they have ever either heard something strange or seen something strange, and 10 out of 10 will tell you most definitely there's something out here that has frightened us or that has got our attention. We just don't know for sure what that entity is. Even little children, kids, will tell you, oh yeah, we spoke to them. We had conversations with them. We actually had relationships with these beings. So for mankind to say that these things does not exist in regard to the history of the Native American people, that was in fact a society that did in fact survive through the major ice age pertaining to the missing link, the 13th tribe, is actually naive for mankind not to believe in these type of forces that are at work. Please, let's listen to the rest of this. It is very, very interesting, is the only reason why that I allowed this on my Facebook page.
And top secret alien files. Leading up to the premiere of Ancient Aliens. Andes mountain range in Ecuador. For thousands of years, this rainforest, high on the eastern slopes, has been the land of the Shuar. Headhunters who are fiercely protective of their homeland and its secrets. And of all the Shuar's secrets, perhaps none has been so carefully guarded as the location and entrance of the Cave of Taos. But why? Perhaps the answer can be found in the story of an Italian Catholic missionary named Father Crespi, who lived in the region in the middle of the last century.
Father Carlo Crespi, he was loved by the Indians. He helped them without asking for money, and the Indians made them some presents.
But what was unique about the presents or gifts given to Father Crespi was that they often took the form of elaborately carved artifacts, some made of gold or other precious metals. Often these objects featured elaborate carvings and symbols, not known to be associated with the Shuar culture. In his 1973 book, Gold of the Gods, ancient astronaut theorist Eric von Daniken wrote of Father Crespi's incredible collection, which he believed to come from the Cave of Taos, and which were, in his opinion, treasures from an unknown and highly advanced culture. The startling questions posed in von Daniken's book soon inspired Scottish explorer Stanley Hall to try and solve the mystery himself. In 1975, Hall traveled to Cuenca to see Father Crespi's collection with his own eyes.
I have for years been researching South America as the missing page of prehistory. I first heard of the Taos Caves was in Eric von Daniken's book and followed it through from there.
And one of the presents which the old priest received is a tablet with 36 writings. It's a metallic tablet. No one until today was able to translate these writings.
In 1976, Stanley Hall mounted an expedition of more than 100 people to explore Taos. Among them was American astronaut Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon.
Listen to this.
Entering the cave through a jungle entrance known to the Ecuadorian army, the explorers were fascinated by what they encountered, especially large areas that appeared to have been excavated by someone or something.
The head of the British Geological Group, Dr. Brian Kelly, in 1976, he admitted that it was difficult for him to explain the actual large doorways that you see in these caves.
I'm going to stop right there for a second. This is the reason why that I am concerned about global warming. I am afraid that eventually, as the ice is steadily deteriorating, either in the North Pole or in the South Pole, that eventually, listen to me carefully, that eventually we're going to discover something that we really don't want to unleash from this planet called precious earth. Whenever you correspond the Bible that talks about locusts, or as locusts that will sting man, that will be more devastating than a scorpion, 7 times the sting. These are attributes that the Bible talks about that has to either be already here, or God is going to unleash these entities upon society to punish those who are antichrists to begin with. I'm afraid personally, that they're already here. I don't know if they're down in a cave. I don't know if they've been frozen in time. But I'm afraid that as the icebergs are steadily melting, we are going to unleash something upon this planet like humanity has never, ever imagined. And it will be something that even the United States military, regardless of what country, will not be able to conquer or overcome. Because these entities that are going to be released from this planet are going to be, in a sense, supernatural, to the point that it will be unlike any other object that has ever manifested itself upon this planet. And it even talks about various things in the Bible pertaining to Revelations and the book of Daniel that will come forth in the last days that will bring misery unto man. I'm afraid if we do not reverse this atmosphere of steadily warming up the oceans and steadily melting the icebergs, that we're going to discover something that we wish that we had never, ever discovered and unleashed uponto this planet. This is the first time that I've ever openly discussed my feelings about interpreting biblical Bible prophecy. And I realize that a lot of people that read that in Revelations, they say, oh, this is just some sort of a figment of John's imagination that is basically just going to be some sort of what's the right word I'm looking for here? Some sort of a metaphor that in reality it's going to be helicopters that's going to be able to sting and hurt man. No, I take the Bible literally. I don't take the Bible figuratively. And whenever it says that there'll be scorpions that's going to have these large stingers on them that's going to be able to do this kind of damage to humanity, I take these things literally and not figuratively. Let's listen to the rest of this, please.
Although Stan Hall's expedition did find a tomb chamber with items dating to 1500 BC,
A ring! A stone ring!
the expedition found no treasure and no trace of anything that looked like the artifacts in Father Crespi's collection. 15 years later, in 1991, the explorer tracked down an Ecuadorian named Petronio Jaramillo, who claimed to have entered the cave of Tayos through a secret entrance back in 1946.
And apparently, Petronio had visited this cave for the very first time when he was very young, when he was in his teens. He said that he had to dive underwater, go in this underwater tunnel, and then come up.
Jaramillo told Hall he wandered through chamber after chamber of ancient relics, including a vast room of books made from gold and other metals. Books with unrecognizable writing. Possibly like that on one of the metal tablets in Father Crespi's collection.
The other things looked like formulas, and so on and so on. So it was one spectacular statement after another.
Some argue whether or not an ancient civilization had come down to Earth and had used this cave system to leave certain artifacts of their civilization behind for us to recover.
Unfortunately, before he could guide Stanley Hall to the underwater cave entrance, Petronio Jaramillo died, taking the secret to his grave. Stanley Hall himself died in 2008, before he was able to renew his search for the so-called metal library. Fortunately, Stanley Hall's daughter Eileen has decided to continue her father's work.
Unless we find this treasure, unless we can see, translate the writing, it's still a big question mark over who wrote it, why they put it there, and who put it there.
But when Eileen Hall began to look for the location of Father Crespi's original artifacts, she learned that much of the priest's collection had mysteriously vanished shortly after his death in 1982. But why? Had Crespi's artifacts fallen prey to thieves? Or might the Shuar have taken their treasure back into the cave where they found it? Whatever the answer, Eileen Hall has continued to research other artifacts from elsewhere in Ecuador. And like Father Crespi's objects, some seem to have uncanny resemblances to other cultures that, according to mainstream archaeology, ancient Ecuadorians could not have had any knowledge of.
This collection is made up of what my father believed to be the formative cultures of Ecuador. This is from the coastal culture from 600 BC to 1600 AD, and this is very human-like, but at the same time some features have been exaggerated. Here you've got the smaller face with the kind of bigger ears and the elongated skull shape in the head.
The top of this head looks like an elongated cranium, an elongated skull, and it is identical to this Egyptian statue that we find all over Egypt. To see this picture right here and compare it to the Egyptian bust we see right here, it's uncanny. The head shape is identical.
Do Stanley Hall's artifacts show evidence that Egyptian culture could have crossed the ocean to influence South American culture?
Yeah.
Or is it possible that both were influenced by another culture, one from beyond our world?
And that's very possible too, because with them being so far apart, there was no way for them to communicate. No way for one culture to have known what the other culture was doing. But yet now, whenever you look at their work, their writings, the things on the walls, comparison to South America over in Egypt, they're almost identically the same. What brought that type of ideology into two completely separate cultures of people during the same generation? It had to be something supernatural that was working beyond the realistical ideals of humanity, especially during that time period. That's the reason why I say that the creator of this universe can manifest itself in any form it chooses to manifest itself in, regardless whether it be a green alien or a light in the sky or other types of entities that we know of today and those that we don't even and have not even explored into in the past. Once more, this is coming from the Windmill Ministries missions here at 291 Thompson Road. We thank you for listening, and we're sorry that we couldn't view it appropriately, but we felt like under certain guidelines it never would have gotten told. And a lot of times it's not so much what we can see, but what we can hear and what we can understand. And it's very important to be able to tell that in which what we know to be factual and not some sort of fiction that has just been imagined by someone's intriguing ideals. Thanks again, and good luck to all of us, and shalom.